The fluorescent lights of Serenity Medical Center's VIP wing hummed overhead as Simone Harris adjusted her scrubs for the third time that morning. 7 years of nursing had taught her to read people quickly, but the man in room 314 was an enigma wrapped in expensive silk pajamas and an attitude that could freeze hell over. Lim Dong-hai had been admitted 3 days ago after what the charts diplomatically called a vehicular accident. The bruises on his knuckles told a different story, as did the way every staff member suddenly found urgent business elsewhere when his name was mentioned. Everyone except Simone. "Mr. Lim, your medication," she announced, entering his room with the same professional warmth she showed every patient. He looked up from his phone, dark eyes assessing her with an intensity that should have been intimidating. Instead, Simone felt something unexpected. Curiosity about the man behind the mask. "I don't need pills," he said, his accent adding weight to each word. "Your body disagrees." She set the cup down firmly. "Take them, or I'll have to explain to Dr. Torres why his patient is being stubborn." For the first time in days, Lim Dong-hai almost smiled. The morning started like any other for Simone Harris. She kissed 7-year-old Ivy goodbye, promising to pick up groceries on the way home, and arrived at Serenity Medical Center 15 minutes early as always. Her Jamaican grandmother's voice echoed in her mind. "Punctuality is respect, child. Respect for others and yourself." 3 years at Serenity had taught Simone to navigate the politics of Atlanta's most prestigious hospital. As one of the few black nurses in the VIP wing, she'd learned to let her work speak louder than whispers in break rooms. Her patients loved her. Her colleagues respected her, and her supervisor Diane Wilson had hinted at a promotion to charge nurse. Everything was perfect until Dr. Alexander Hartwell decided it wasn't. "Harris!" His voice cut across the nurse's station like a whip crack. "My office, now." Simone exchanged glances with her best friend Monique Turner, who was updating patient charts nearby. Monique's worried expression mirrored her own confusion. Dr. Hartwell, the hospital's chief medical director, rarely spoke to nurses directly, preferring to communicate through supervisors. "What's this about?" Simone asked, as she followed his brisk stride down the hallway. "You tell me." He slammed his office door and wheeled around, his face flushed with barely contained rage. "Where are they?" "Where are what?" "Don't play innocent with me. The morphine vials from the VIP pharmacy. 12 doses worth thousands of dollars, missing from your shift yesterday." Simone's blood ran cold. "I don't know anything about missing morphine." "Of course you don't." His laugh was ugly. "You people always have an excuse." The words hit her like a physical blow. "Excuse me?" "I've been watching you, Harris. Coming in here with your attitude, thinking you're better than everyone else. Well, I have security footage of you in that pharmacy yesterday, and now medication is missing. Draw your own conclusions." "That's impossible. I logged every medication I dispensed. Check the records." "The records that you had access to, Alter?" He leaned forward, his voice dropping to a venomous whisper. "I've been waiting for an excuse to clean house around here. Too many undesirable elements have been allowed to flourish." Simone's hands trembled with rage and disbelief. "You're accusing me of theft based on what? The fact that I was doing my job?" "I'm stating facts. Medication is missing. You were there. Case closed." He picked up his phone. "Security? Yes, I need an escort to the lobby. We have a termination to handle." "Dr. Hartwell, please. I have a daughter. I need this job. I would never save it for someone who cares." The next 30 minutes passed in a nightmare blur. Security guards flanked Simone as Dr. Hartwell marched her through the hospital corridors. Patients, visitors, and staff turned to stare as the procession made its way to the main lobby. The lunch rush meant maximum witnesses to her humiliation. "Ladies and gentlemen," Dr. Hartwell's voice boomed across the crowded space. "I want everyone to see what happens to thieves in my hospital." Simone's cheeks burned with shame and fury. "Dr. Hartwell, please don't do this. Simone Harris has been terminated for theft of controlled substances. Security will escort her from the premises immediately." His smile was cruel and satisfied. I always knew people like you didn't belong here. The lobby fell silent, except for the sound of Simone's ragged breathing. Tears she'd been fighting finally spilled over as the weight of her situation crashed down. No job meant no insurance for Ivy. No income meant losing their apartment. 7 years of building a career, destroyed in minutes by a man who'd never seen her as anything more than a problem to be eliminated. "Please," she whispered, hating herself for begging. "I didn't do anything wrong." "Escort her out," Dr. Hartwell commanded the guards. That's when a voice cut through the chaos like a blade through silk. "She's with me." The lobby fell into absolute silence. Every head turned toward the source of the voice, a man in a wheelchair being pushed by a hospital orderly. Even sitting down, Lim Dong-hai commanded the space with a presence that made the air feel electric. He was dressed in a perfectly tailored black suit, despite being a patient, his dark hair styled with precision that spoke of expensive grooming. But it was his eyes that made people step back, cold, calculating, and currently fixed on Dr. Hartwell with an intensity that could have melted steel. "I'm sorry, who are you?" Dr. Hartwell's voice had lost some of its bluster. Lim Dong-hai rose from the wheelchair slowly, deliberately. The orderly stepped back as if released from a spell. When Dong-hai stood to his full height, the lobby seemed to shrink around him. "I'm the man who's about to make your life very interesting, Doctor." His accent made each word sound like a promise and a threat, "and I said she's with me." Dr. Hartwell's face had gone pale, but his arrogance wouldn't let him back down completely. "This is a hospital matter. Security, remove this man as well." The security guards looked between Dr. Hartwell and Dong-hai, clearly recognizing something the doctor didn't. Neither moved. "Gentlemen," Dong-hai's voice remained conversational, "I suggest you reconsider your career choices very carefully. Now see here." "Doctor," Hartwell began. "No, you see." Dong-hai took a step forward, and somehow that single movement made him seem to tower over everyone in the room. "This woman has shown me more genuine care in 3 days than you've shown anyone in your entire pathetic career, and you dare to humiliate her." He turned to Simone, his expression softening slightly. "Miss Harris, would you do me the honor of accepting a position as my personal nurse? The salary is considerably better than what this establishment offers." Simone stared at him in shock. I don't understand." "You will." He extended his hand to her. "Trust me." Something in his eyes, not the coldness he'd shown Dr. Hartwell, but a warmth she'd glimpsed during their interactions upstairs, made her reach out and take his hand. "As for you, Doctor," Dong-hai's attention returned to Hartwell, and the temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. "I suggest you pray we never meet again under different circumstances." The threat hung in the air like smoke as Dong-hai led Simone toward the exit, leaving behind a lobby full of stunned witnesses and one very pale doctor, who was beginning to realize he'd made a terrible mistake. Simone's hands shook as she buckled Ivy into the back seat of the sleek black sedan that had appeared outside their modest apartment building. The events of the past week felt surreal, losing her job, accepting a position she didn't fully understand, and now moving into the penthouse of a man she barely knew. "Mama, is this our new car?" Ivy asked, running her small fingers over the leather seats. "No, baby, we're just borrowing it." Simone caught the driver's eyes in the rearview mirror. Yoon Dae-sung had introduced himself politely, but said little else during the ride from the hospital to their apartment. The elevator ride to the 40th floor was silent, except for Ivy's excited chatter about the buttons and mirrors. When the doors opened directly into Dong-hai's penthouse, Simone's breath caught in her throat. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of Atlanta's skyline. The furniture was modern and expensive, all clean lines and neutral colors. Everything screamed wealth and power, from the original artwork on the walls to the marble floors that probably cost more than Simone made in a year. "Welcome to your new home," Dong-hai said, emerging from what appeared to be a home office. He'd changed from his hospital clothes into dark jeans and a white button-down shirt that somehow made him look more approachable and more dangerous at the same time. "This isn't our home," Simone said quickly. "This is temporary until I find another job." "Of course." His slight smile suggested he thought otherwise. "Ivy, would you like to see your room?" Ivy's eyes went wide. "I get my own room." "You do? It has a view of the park and a reading nook by the window." As Donghai led Ivy down a hallway, Simone remained frozen in the living room. Everything felt like a dream, or maybe a trap. Men like him didn't rescue women like her without expecting something in return. "Miss Harris," a woman's voice made her turn. "I'm Mrs. Chen, Mr. Lim's housekeeper. Would you like me to show you to your quarters?" The quarters turned out to be a suite larger than Simone's entire apartment, complete with a sitting area and private bathroom. Her few belongings looked lost in the walk-in closet. "Mr. Lim asked me to give you this," Mrs. Chen said, handing her an envelope. "Dinner is at 7. Ivy has already made herself at home in the kitchen, helping with cookies." Alone, Simone opened the envelope with trembling fingers. Inside was a contract written in precise legal language, outlining her duties as Donghai's private nurse. The salary figure made her gasp. It was 3 times what she'd made at the hospital, but it was the handwritten note at the bottom that made her heart race. "You saved my life in ways you don't understand. Let me return the favor. No strings attached. D.H." That evening, dinner was a revelation. Donghai had ordered Korean takeout, but he also asked Mrs. Chen to prepare some of Ivy's favorite foods, based on a list Simone had provided. Watching this powerful, intimidating man patiently teach her daughter how to use chopsticks while listening to her chatter about school was surreal. "Mama used to live in Jamaica," Ivy announced, sauce on her chin. "She makes the best curry chicken in the whole world. Does she?" Donghai's eyes met Simone's across the table. "I'd like to try it sometime." "Maybe," Simone said carefully. She was still trying to figure out his angle, waiting for the other shoe to drop. After Ivy went to bed, in a room that was indeed perfect for a 7-year-old, complete with a canopy bed and shelves full of books, Simone found Donghai on the terrace, looking out over the city lights. "We need to talk," she said. "I assumed we would." "Who are you really? And don't say you're just a businessman." He was quiet for so long, she thought he wouldn't answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was softer than she'd ever heard it. "I'm someone who recognizes strength when I see it. You treated me like a human being when everyone else treated me like a threat. You stood up to me when I was being difficult. You cared about my recovery, not my reputation. That's my job. No, that's who you are." He turned to face her, and in the soft lighting she could see vulnerability beneath his controlled exterior. "I haven't met many people like you, Simone." The way he said her name sent an unexpected shiver down her spine. "You still haven't answered my question." "I'm someone who has the power to make Dr. Hartwell's life very uncomfortable, and I intend to use it." Before she could respond, his phone buzzed. His expression hardened as he read the message. "What is it?" "Business." But the way he said it made her blood run cold. "Choi De-hyun will be here tomorrow. He's my associate. Don't worry about him." "Should I be worried about you?" The question hung between them like a bridge neither was ready to cross. Finally, Donghai stepped closer, close enough that she could smell his cologne and see the flecks of gold in his dark eyes. "You should be worried about how much I'm starting to care about you and Ivy," he said quietly, "because in my world, caring about someone makes them a target." The admission sent heat racing through her veins, even as fear whispered warnings in her mind. Then maybe we should keep this professional. Maybe we should. But neither of them moved away. The moment stretched between them, electric and dangerous, until Ivy's voice calling for water broke the spell. As Simone hurried inside to tend to her daughter, she missed the way Donghai's hands clenched into fists at his sides, or the look of fierce protectiveness that crossed his face as he watched her go. In his pocket, his phone buzzed again with another message from his lieutenant. Kim Jae-sung is making moves. He knows about the woman and the child. Dong-hai deleted the message and made a mental note to double security. He'd brought Simone into his world to protect her, but now she was in more danger than ever. The irony wasn't lost on him. In trying to save her, he might have doomed them both. 3 weeks into their arrangement, Simone had settled into a routine that felt dangerously comfortable. Mornings were spent checking Dong-hai's recovery progress. His ribs were healing well, though he pushed himself harder than any doctor would recommend. Afternoons belonged to Ivy, who had adapted to their new life with the resilience of childhood. It was during one of these afternoon sessions, while Ivy practiced piano in the music room Dong-hai had somehow acquired overnight, that Simone discovered the truth about her employer. She'd been looking for medical supplies in his home office when she accidentally knocked over a stack of papers. As she bent to collect them, Korean characters and what looked like organizational charts caught her eye. Her limited knowledge of Korean couldn't translate the text, but the structure was unmistakable: hierarchy, territories, and what appeared to be financial records that no legitimate business would keep. "Find what you were looking for." Simone spun around, papers scattering again. Dong-hai stood in the doorway, his expression unreadable. "I was just snooping." But he didn't sound angry, just tired. "I wondered when you'd figure it out." "Figure what out?" Though her heart was already pounding with the answer. He entered the office and closed the door behind him. "Sit down, Simone." "I'd rather stand, please." The quiet plea in his voice made her sink into the leather chair across from his desk. He didn't sit, instead moving to the window that overlooked the city. "My name is Lim Dong-hai, and I run the Beko organization. We control territory from here to Savannah, with interests in shipping, real estate and other ventures." His voice was matter-of-fact, as if he were discussing the weather. "What you would call the Korean Mafia." The words hit her like ice water. "You're a criminal." "I'm a businessman who operates outside conventional law." "That's the same thing." He turned to face her, and she saw something she hadn't expected. Shame. "Yes, it is." Simone's mind raced. Everything made sense now. The way people reacted to him, the expensive lifestyle, the casual threats to Dr. Hartwell. "And you brought me and Ivy into this world without telling us?" "I brought you into my protection. By lying to us. By keeping you safe." His composure cracked, revealing the intensity beneath. "Do you think Dr. Hartwell's harassment was random? He's been taking bribes from pharmaceutical companies to push certain drugs. When you started asking questions about patient reactions, you became a problem." Simone stared at him. "What are you talking about?" "Your friend Monique Turner has been feeding me information. Hartwell's been running an illegal drug trial using VIP patients as unknowing test subjects. You were getting too close to the truth." The revelation hit her like a physical blow. "Monique's been spying for you. Monique's been trying to protect you. She came to me after Hartwell started making threats about cleaning house. She knew what that meant." "And what does it mean?" Dong-hai's jaw tightened. "In his case, it meant framing you for theft and destroying your career to keep you quiet. In other cases—" He didn't finish the sentence. Simone felt sick. "So you rescued me to what? Recruit me?" "I rescued you because watching him humiliate you made me want to burn that hospital to the ground." The raw honesty in his voice stopped her cold. "I rescued you because in 3 days, you showed me more genuine kindness than I've experienced in years. I rescued you because the thought of anything happening to you or Ivy terrifies me more than any enemy I've ever faced." The confession hung between them like a live wire. Simone searched his face for deception and found only painful truth. "You're a gangster," she whispered. "Yes. You hurt people. When necessary. You break the law. Every day. And you expect me to be okay with this?" He moved closer, slowly, as if approaching a wounded animal. "I expect you to understand that everything I am, everything I do, is now focused on keeping you and Ivy safe. The rest, we can figure out together." Before she could respond, the sound of the elevator arriving made them both freeze. Choi Dae-hyun's voice carried from the living room, speaking rapid Korean. "Stay here," Dong-hae commanded, but Simone was already moving toward the door. "If this affects me and Ivy, I have a right to know." She pushed past him into the living room, where Choi Dae-hyun stood with two other men she didn't recognize. The conversation stopped abruptly when they saw her. "Hyung," Dae-hyun said carefully, using the Korean term of respect. "We should discuss this privately." "Discuss what?" Simone demanded. Dong-hae's expression had shifted back to the cold mask she remembered from the hospital. "Dae-hyun, report. Kim Jae-sung has been asking questions about your household staff. He knows about Miss Harris and the child." The temperature in the room seemed to drop. "What kind of questions? Where they go to school? Shopping patterns? Security details?" Dae-hyun's eyes flicked to Simone apologetically. "He's planning something." "Who is Kim Jae-sung?" Simone asked, though she dreaded the answer. "A rival who would like to see me dead," Dong-hae said simply, "and who now knows that hurting you would accomplish that goal." The implications crashed over her like a wave. By accepting his protection, she'd painted a target on herself and Ivy. "We have to leave. Tonight." "No." "Yes, I won't let my daughter become collateral damage in your war." "She already is." The brutal honesty of his words silenced her. "The moment I claimed you in that hospital lobby, you became part of my world. Running won't change that." "Then what do you suggest?" "I suggest you trust me to keep you safe. Trust a criminal. Trust the man who would die before letting anything happen to you." The intensity in his voice, the raw emotion he couldn't quite hide, made her heart race for all the wrong reasons. This was insane. She should take Ivy and run as far as possible. She should call the police, the FBI, anyone who could protect them from this world of violence and danger. Instead, she found herself asking, "What do we do?" Relief flickered across his features. "We prepare, and we stay together." As Dae-hyun and his men began discussing security protocols, Simone realized she'd just made a choice that would change everything. She was no longer just a nurse who'd stumbled into the wrong situation. She was Lim Dong-hae's woman, with all the protection and danger that title carried. The thought should have terrified her. Instead, as she watched him take command of the situation with quiet authority, she felt something far more dangerous than fear. She felt like she belonged. The call came at 3:17 a.m. on a Tuesday that started like any other. Simone jerked awake to the sound of Dong-hae's phone buzzing insistently on the nightstand. They'd been sharing the same space for 6 weeks now, and she'd grown accustomed to his late-night business calls, but something about the urgency of this one made her blood run cold. "What?" His voice was instantly alert, no trace of sleep. Simone couldn't understand the rapid Korean on the other end, but she didn't need to. The way Dong-hae's body went rigid, the string of what sounded like curses that followed, told her everything she needed to know. "When?" he demanded, switching to English. "How long ago?" More Korean, faster now, panicked. "Lock down everything, now. I want every man we have on the streets." He was already out of bed, pulling on clothes with military precision. "And find me Kim Jae-sung." The call ended, and in the sudden silence, Simone could hear her own heartbeat thundering in her ears. "What's happened?" she whispered, though part of her already knew. Dong-hae turned to face her, and the expression on his face made her world tilt sideways. She'd seen him angry, seen him dangerous, but she'd never seen him afraid. Not until now. "Ivy's gone." The words hit her like a physical blow. "What do you mean, gone?" "She was taken from school 20 minutes ago." Simone's world exploded into fragments. No, that's impossible. She's safe at school. You said she was safe." She was out of bed, moving toward Ivy's room, even though logic told her it was useless. The bed was still made from yesterday morning, the stuffed animals arranged exactly as Ivy had left them. "Simone," Dong-hae's voice was gentle but firm. "We need to focus." "Focus?" She spun around, rage and terror warring in her chest. My baby is gone and you want me to focus. I want you to help me get her back. The simple statement cut through her panic like a blade. What do you mean? I mean Kim Jae-sung has made the biggest mistake of his life, and he's going to pay for it. But I need you thinking clearly, not falling apart. How can you be so calm? Because falling apart won't bring Ivy home. He moved closer, his hands settling on her shoulders. But I will, I promise you, Simone, I will bring her home. The conviction in his voice, the absolute certainty, steadied her more than any comfort could have. What do we do? We wait for his call. He'll want to negotiate. They didn't have to wait long. Donghai's phone rang again at 4:15 a.m. Kim Jae-sung, he answered, his voice deadly calm. Lim Donghai. The voice on the speaker was smooth, cultured, speaking accented English for Simone's benefit. I trust you've discovered your loss by now. Where is she? The child is safe, for now. Such a beautiful little girl. She has her mother's eyes. Simone's hands clenched into fists. The casual way he spoke about Ivy, as if she were a commodity, made her want to scream. What do you want? Donghai's voice remained level, but Simone could see the tension in his jaw. You know what I want. Your territory, your operations, your complete surrender. You have 24 hours to transfer everything to me, or the child disappears forever. And if I agree, then you and the woman live. Somewhere far from Atlanta, of course. I'm not unreasonable. I want proof of life. There was a pause, then rustling sounds. When Ivy's voice came through the speaker, small and scared but trying to be brave, Simone nearly collapsed. Mama? Mama, I'm okay. The man says you're coming to get me soon. Ivy! Simone lunged for the phone, but Donghai caught her wrist. That's enough, Jae-sung's voice returned. 24 hours, Donghai. Don't test me. The line went dead. Simone stared at the phone in Donghai's hand, her mind struggling to process what had just happened. He has my baby. He has my baby, and he's using her to get to you. Yes. So give him what he wants. It's not that simple. Yes, it is. She pulled away from him, pacing the room like a caged animal. Give him your territory, your money, whatever he wants. Ivy is more important than any of that. You think I don't know that? The mask slipped, revealing the anguish beneath. You think I wouldn't burn everything I've built to get her back? Then do it. If I give him what he wants, we're all dead within a week. Men like Jae-sung don't honor deals. He'll take my territory and then eliminate the only witnesses to his methods. The brutal logic of it hit her like ice water. So what's the alternative? We get her back ourselves. How? By being smarter, faster, and more ruthless than he is. Donghai moved to his desk, pulling out maps and files. Daehyun is already mobilizing our people. We'll find where he's keeping her. And then? Then we bring her home. The next 18 hours passed in a blur of activity. The penthouse became a command center, with Daehyun and other men Simone didn't recognize coming and going with reports and updates. She felt useless, helpless, watching these dangerous men plan what amounted to a military operation to rescue her daughter. I want to come with you, she announced, when Donghai outlined the final plan. Absolutely not. She's my daughter, which is exactly why you're staying here. I won't risk losing you both. You think I'm just going to sit here while you risk your life for my child? Yes. His tone brooked no argument. Because if something goes wrong, if we don't make it back, someone needs to be here to take care of Ivy when we do find her. The logic was sound. But it felt like cowardice. I can't just do nothing. You're not doing nothing. You're trusting me. He cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs brushing away tears she didn't realize she'd shed. Trust me, Simone. I've never failed at anything that mattered this much. What if... No. He silenced her with a kiss that tasted like desperation and promises. No what-ifs. I'm bringing our daughter home. Our daughter. The words hit her harder than any declaration of love could have. In 6 weeks, this dangerous, complicated man had become more of a father to Ivy than her biological father had ever been. Come back to me, she whispered against his lips. Always. As she watched him leave with Dae-hyun and 6 other men, all armed and dressed in black, Simone realized she was no longer the same woman who'd been humiliated in a hospital lobby 2 months ago. That woman would have called the police, would have trusted the system to save her child. This woman trusted a criminal to bring her daughter home, and somehow that felt like the sanest decision she'd ever made. The warehouse district at 2 a.m. was a maze of shadows and silence, broken only by the distant hum of highway traffic. Dong-hae crouched behind a shipping container, studying the building where his sources had tracked Kim Jae-sung. 2 guards at the front entrance, probably more inside. Standard setup for a temporary holding location. Thermal imaging shows 4 heat signatures on the 2nd floor, Dae-hyun reported through his earpiece. 1 small enough to be the child. Positions? 2 guards, 1 stationary figure that's likely Jae-sung, and the child in what appears to be a separate room. Dong-hae's jaw tightened. Ivy had been missing for 22 hours. 22 hours of terror for Simone. 22 hours of a 7-year-old girl wondering why no one had come for her yet. "Remember," he said into his mic, addressing his team, "the child's safety is the only priority. Everything else is secondary." The assault was swift and precise. Dong-hae's men had been with him for years, and they moved like a single organism. The front guards were neutralized silently. The back entrance was breached simultaneously. Within 3 minutes they controlled the ground floor. "Movement upstairs," came the report. Dong-hae took the stairs 2 at a time, his weapon drawn but hoping he wouldn't need it. The hallway was narrow with 3 doors. The thermal imaging had been accurate. Voices came from the room at the end. "You're early," Kim Jae-sung's voice called out as Dong-hae approached. "I said 24 hours. I'm impatient." Dong-hae positioned himself beside the door frame. "Let the girl go, and we can discuss terms." "I don't think so. Come in, Dong-hae, slowly, and tell your men to stay back." Dong-hae signaled to Dae-hyun, then stepped into the room. Jae-sung stood near the window, impeccably dressed despite the late hour. Ivy sat in a chair nearby, her hands zip-tied but otherwise unharmed. When she saw Dong-hae, her face lit up with relief and hope. Uncle Dong-hae. The title hit him like a physical blow. In 6 weeks, this little girl had claimed a piece of his heart he didn't know existed. "Hello, Princess. Are you okay?" "I'm scared, but I was brave like Mama taught me." "You were very brave." He kept his voice calm, reassuring, while his mind calculated angles and distances. "Uncle's going to take you home now." "How touching," Jae-sung said. "The great Lim Dong-hae brought low by a woman and child. Let her go, your fight is with me. My fight is with your empire. The child is just leverage. Then you've miscalculated." Dong-hae took a careful step closer. "Because there's nothing I won't do to protect her." "Including die?" "Especially that." Jae-sung smiled, but there was uncertainty in his eyes now. He'd expected negotiation, not this quiet certainty. "You'd throw away everything you've built for one child?" "I'd throw away everything I've built for her smile." The admission hung in the air between them. In that moment, Dong-hae realized it was true. Somewhere between Simone's fierce protectiveness and Ivy's innocent trust, he'd found something worth more than power or territory. "Uncle Dong-hae?" Ivy's small voice broke the tension. "The man said Mama was crying. Is Mama okay?" The image of Simone in tears, terrified and helpless, ignited something primal in Dong-hae's chest. "Mama's fine, Princess. She's waiting for you at home." "Can we go home now?" "Yes." He looked at Jae-sung. "We can go home now." What happened next was over in seconds. Jae-sung reached for his weapon. Dong-hae moved faster, years of survival instinct taking over. When the brief struggle ended, Jae-sung was on the floor, and Dong-hae was cutting the zip ties from Ivy's wrists. "Is the bad man sleeping?" Ivy asked, looking at Jae-sung's still form. "Yes, Princess. He's sleeping." Dong-hae lifted her into his arms, and she wrapped her small arms around his neck with complete trust. "Let's go home to Mama." The ride back to the penthouse was the longest of Dong-hae's life. Ivy had fallen asleep against his shoulder, exhausted by her ordeal, but safe. Dae-hyun drove in silence, understanding that his boss needed this moment to process what had just happened. Dong-hae had killed before. It was part of his world, an unfortunate necessity of the life he'd chosen. But tonight felt different. Tonight, he'd killed to protect his family. The elevator ride to the penthouse seemed to take forever. When the doors opened, Simone was there, pacing the living room like a caged lioness. The moment she saw them, she broke. "Ivy!" "Oh God, Ivy!" Ivy woke up at her mother's voice and practically launched herself from Dong-hae's arms into Simone's embrace. Both of them were crying, holding each other like they'd never let go. "Mama, I was so scared, but I remembered what you said about being brave, and Uncle Dong-hae came just like he promised." "Uncle Dong-hae promised?" Simone looked at him over Ivy's head, tears streaming down her face. "I told her uncle always keeps his promises," Dong-hae said quietly. "Always. Always." Later, after Ivy had been fed, bathed, and tucked into bed with extra stories and promises that no one would ever take her away again, Simone found Dong-hae on the terrace. He stood at the railing, still wearing the black tactical gear from the rescue, staring out at the city lights. "Is he dead?" she asked without preamble. Yes, she should have felt horror, should have been appalled by the violence. Instead, she felt only relief. "Good." He turned to look at her, surprise flickering across his features. "He threatened my daughter," she said simply. "I'm glad he's dead." "You don't know what you're saying." "I know exactly what I'm saying." She moved closer, close enough to see the exhaustion and something else, vulnerability, in his eyes. "I'm saying thank you for bringing her home. I'm saying I understand what you did and why you did it. And I'm saying I love you." The words hung between them like a bridge across an impossible chasm. "Simone." "I love you," she repeated, stronger now. "I love the man who treats my daughter like she's precious. I love the man who would risk everything to keep us safe. I love the man who came home to us. I'm not a good man. You're my man. You're Ivy's Uncle Dong-hae. You're the man who stood up in a hospital lobby and said, 'She's with me when no one else would.' That's good enough." When he kissed her this time, it tasted like coming home, like promises kept and futures built on foundations stronger than fear. When they broke apart, he rested his forehead against hers. "I love you too," he whispered. "Both of you. More than I thought possible." "Then that's all that matters. The world I live in is our world now. We'll face it together." As they stood there, holding each other under the Atlanta stars, neither of them noticed Ivy watching from the doorway, smiling sleepily at the sight of her mama, and Uncle Dong-hae finally admitting what she'd known all along. They were a family. 6 months later, the smell of curry chicken and jasmine rice filled the penthouse as Simone put the finishing touches on dinner. Through the kitchen window, she could see Dong-hae and Ivy on the terrace, working on what Ivy called her secret garden, a collection of plants that somehow thrived 40 floors above the city. "Mama!" Ivy burst through the terrace doors, dirt on her hands and joy on her face. "Uncle Dong-hae says the tomatoes will be ready next week." "Uncle Dong-hae is very smart about gardens," Simone agreed, accepting a slightly grubby hug. "Among other things," Dong-hae said, following Ivy inside. He'd traded his usual business attire for jeans and a t-shirt, though he still moved with the quiet confidence that had first caught her attention in that hospital room. "Wash up, both of you. Dinner's ready." As they gathered around the table, the same table where they'd shared their first meal as a family, Simone marveled at how normal their life had become. Dong-hae still ran his organization, but he'd restructured things to spend more time at home. Ivy had started at a new school with security that was invisible but thorough, and Simone had found her calling working with a free clinic that served Atlanta's underserved communities, using skills and connections that her unique position provided. "Mama," Ivy said around a mouthful of rice, "Sarah at school says her daddy is taking her to Disney World. Can Uncle Dong-hae take us to Disney World?" Simone and Dong Hai exchanged glances. They'd been having conversations about making their arrangement more permanent, about what it would mean for all of them. "Would you like Uncle Dong Hai to take us to Disney World?" Simone asked carefully. "Yes, but—" Ivy's face scrunched up in concentration. Sarah's daddy is really her daddy. Uncle Dong Hai is just Uncle Dong Hai. "What if Uncle Dong Hai could be more than just Uncle Dong Hai?" Dong Hai asked quietly. Ivy's eyes went wide. "You mean like a real daddy? Would you like that?" "Yes!" She launched herself from her chair into his arms. "Can I call you Daddy now?" "If your mama says it's okay." Ivy turned to Simone with pleading eyes. "Mama, please. He already tucks me in and reads stories and helps with homework and protects us from bad people. That's what daddies do, right?" Simone's throat tightened with emotion. "That's exactly what daddies do. So can he be my daddy? If he wants to be." "I want to be," Dong Hai said, his voice rough with emotion. "More than anything." Later that night, after Ivy had fallen asleep clutching the adoption papers Dong Hai had somehow produced with remarkable speed, Simone found herself back on the terrace where so many of their important conversations had taken place. "No regrets?" Dong Hai asked, joining her at the railing. "About which part? Falling in love with a criminal? Becoming part of your world or agreeing to marry you?" "Any of it, all of it." She turned to face him, this man who had changed everything about her life in the best possible way. "Do you remember what you said to me that first day in the hospital lobby? She's with me. And I am, we are. For better or worse, in your world or any other, we're with you." She smiled, reaching up to touch the small scar on his jaw from that night 6 months ago. "Besides, someone has to keep you in line. Is that what you're doing?" Among other things. When he kissed her, she could taste their future, complicated, dangerous, but built on a foundation of love strong enough to weather any storm. In the distance, Atlanta sparkled like a promise, and somewhere in the penthouse behind them, their daughter slept safely, dreaming of Disney World and the daddy who would take her there. It wasn't the life Simone had planned, but it was the life she'd chosen. And as Dong Hai's arms tightened around her, she knew she'd choose it again every single time. Some love stories begin with meet-cutes and coffee shops. Others begin with humiliation and rescue, with a powerful man standing up and saying 4 simple words that change everything. "She's with me." And sometimes, if you're very lucky, that's exactly where they end too.